All right, guys, so it looks like there's been a lot of information that's come out for Diablo 4 in the past week or so. I haven't really done a lot of reaction content, so we're going to kind of go through a couple different videos, see what's going on, see what news is out there, and give you guys my thoughts and my reactions on it. So let's go ahead and hop into it and get started.
Okay, now we have a ton of news to discuss today about Diablo 4. We have gear pathing to the max level, skill respec costs being reduced, and Blizzard actually going back on what they said before. So potential monetization angles they could take.
So the skill spec redesign is something that we knew about the other day, and we kind of mentioned it. We kind of mentioned it on stream, and I couldn't find the tweet, but I did know about this particular thing. The potential monetization I'm interested in. I still think a lot of it's fear mongering, so we definitely need to get further into it to see if it's actually fear mongering or something real. And then the gear progression I'm excited for. Let's
take on players for convenience. The Butcher possibly being confirmed inside Nightmare Dungeons, and the full map leaked.
I'm pretty sure the Butcher was confirmed that he was going to pop up no matter what.
With crucial locations on Reddit for Diablo 4. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen,
we did see the full map, and we put that out on Twitter as well.
Kids have done a total of 3 Diablo 4 game copies giveaways so far, so don't forget to stick around until the end of the video to see how you can earn a free copy for yourself. Okay, so starting things off with gear pathing to the max level. Everyone's going to love getting those crucial legendary pieces to getting their characters some big power spikes to deal more damage. And we've had an amazing Reddit user breakdown a video created by Majestic Multigaming explaining your path of gearing to the end game from level 1 all the way up to level 100. And there is some amazing information here that is definitely crucial for your gearing in general. So leveling from 1 to 50, you're going to have access to world...
All right, so I'm just going to kind of read through this real quick. Unlock, start of the game, world 2, yeah. So that was the way it was in the beta. We had access to difficulty 1 and 2, and then we had to get to level 50 to unlock anything higher than that. I remember that. Okay, so there's some sort of rare weapon that can drop. Okay. Rare items have 3 affixes. Legendary items have 4. Rare and legendary items share the same pool. Legendary aspects can be crafted onto rare and legendary items, so we knew all that.
Difficulty tier in 2. These tiers are going to give you 20% increased experience.
It's the Butcher's weapon. I think he has a chance to drop it. That would be interesting if it works well for every class, you know what I mean? Even if it doesn't, it would be nice to get. I'd like to see it in game for sure. How you doing, Doc? Okay, so another time, I'm just going to read this instead of like letting them do it, and then I'll cut out whatever they're saying if it's not really relevant. Or if it's not anything that's like super, you know what I mean? Something that we can talk about. Unlock world difficulty 3, 100% XP, yeah. And foes overcome 20% resistance. Requirement, complete the campaign and the Caldera of Light capstone dungeon. So you can't even access World Tier 3 until level 50 and have completed the campaign, which to me tells me that you will for sure have a lot of post-campaign grinding, which isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as there's a fun way to do it, right? That is interesting though. World difficulty 3, sacred and unique items added to the pool. So you can't even get those until level 50. So this is a key power spike moment. So until you're able to do world, it sounds like these won't even drop unless it's on tier, like difficulty 3. Nightmare sigils, which is what you need to make the nightmare dungeons, which is sort of like the keys for dungeons in WoW. Like if you're doing keys, I think. Yeah, it said in beta that T3 didn't unlock till 50 plus. Yeah, that's why this isn't too much of a surprise. It is nice to see like when the sigils will drop, right? Hell Tides can appear, champ monsters. So Hell Tides will be able to appear. Special crafting materials and ingredients, that would make sense because you're going to have higher tier like gear that's going to need those. Only sacred grade aspects can be grafted, so like brought over onto sacred items. That's interesting, maybe because they would scale unfavorably or poorly or way too strong. So that's interesting though.
Tier 3 is when you're going to start seeing mobs hit significantly harder and being a lot more difficult to kill, especially early on in the tier. like around just when you hit level 50, but with a few hours of farming and getting gear, your character is going to hit massive power spikes with having access to the new unique gear and all the new sacred items added to the pool. And for the absolute final tier, you have tier 4, which unlocks at level 7.
I wonder how bad the XP scaling and grind is going to be from like 70 up to 100. Because it's like the first real season, I imagine that this isn't going to be a fast grind. As compared to like Diablo 4 or any of the other games that are out right now that have been out for a while where you can like pretty much just push through it, you know what I mean, in like a matter of hours your first time. I imagine this is actually going to take a little while, and it might take people all the way up to the beginning of the first season to even hit these numbers, you know what I mean? And then that's not to say that once you hit the first season, you don't have to start on a fresh seasonal character, and none of what you've just done even matters.
And gives you 200% increase to experience, and foes become even harder with overcoming 40% resistance. The requirement for this is going to be completing the Fallen Temple Capstone Dungeon in the Northeastern Dry Steppes on World Tier 3, and at World Tier Difficulty 4, ancestral items and new unique items can now drop and are added into the loot pool.
So this is where the in-game loots and builds start to happen, and this is one of the things I think a lot of people forgot when they were talking about how much easier the game felt, and how it felt really bad to play with like level 8s that were doing just as much damage as your level 21 and stuff like that. That's on World Tier 2, and that was the beginning of the game. Now, if you take a level 8 and put them up against, you know what I mean? You take a level 8 and somehow maybe it's your ult and you can get it on World Tier 5, or this is World Tier 4, and have them stand next to a fully kitted out level 100, I guarantee it's going to be a night and day difference. Like 100%.
Which helps significantly for your endgame loot and build overall to be able to do those hardest dungeons possible. And a massive bonus as well is that rare items now have 4 affixes just like legendary items.
Which is nice because then when you upscale your rare item to a legendary, you know what I mean?
This is going to allow you to get loot that isn't all about legendary and uniques, as well as sacred items. This is going to include rare items in the loot pool that are very, very powerful, so you're more commonly going to get that loot that is going to benefit your character in.
Well, the thing I think is it's going to say, like, at this point, you might get a rare that drops that's better than your legendary that you're wearing from a prior tier, and you'll want to go ahead and equip it. Obviously, those rares aren't going to be used in your in-game builds, but as soon as you get into this world tier, I think you're really going to want to just start putting on everything you can find from there.
The end game. Another great tip is if you want to screenshot this image on the screen currently, is that you can find the best affix rolls for each individual gear slot you possibly can obtain. So for example, the helmet would contain skill ranks to your abilities as well as cooldown and max resource. The gloves will contain skill ranks to your second tree, as well as having offensive-based affix rolls. The boots would have skill ranks, as well as mobility skills and containing movement, dodge, and resource cost reduction affixes, so on and so forth. This is going to be amazing if you're looking for those absolute BIS items to get the best bang for your buck you possibly can.
What he just said there was best in slot, if you didn't know what BIS was.
Overall, there's going to be loads of progression through Diablo 4 on your journey.
I mean, these look good. I'm excited to get in game and see how the eye level sort of stacks out. Do you know what I mean?
I love how all of it is depending on your level and the difference in world tiers, which makes things a lot more difficult, but it will give you access to the highest and best gear in the game you possibly could obtain. Now,
yeah, I mean, it does. I was going to make like a comment about how the highest and the best gear is going to be very dependent on the world tier you want to play in and everything else. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's right.
one of my biggest personal concerns with Diablo is the fact that you don't have access to instantly swap builds without it costing a ton of gold. I personally have been begging for a dual spec system like they have in World of Warcraft and even other games, but something that can definitely help with this and push it in the right direction was on Twitter.
I mean, a dual spec would be nice if you just had a button, right? And you could just flip over, or like World of Warcraft, you can save builds and do a lot of different stuff, and it just doesn't cost anything to respec. You literally just copy a build offline, you paste it in, and it specs your character out 100%, puts all your points where they need to be. It's very, very easy. Maybe we'll see something like that in Diablo 4 later, but right now I think they're going to try to force people into the respec'ing. And then over time, maybe they'll ease it up. I know that they've lowered the cost and made it considerably easier, but I think eventually it'll go the way of all the rest of their games where it'll just be free.
A fan asked Rob Ferguson, Diablo 4 was a great time so far, and me and my friends have enjoyed it. We're all older now and really don't want to have to remake characters instead of being able to more easily redistribute skill points. Is this for sure going to ship at launch? Rob Ferguson then replied, it's not prohibitively expensive, and we've made it clear by being able to refund a single skill point or the entire tree at once.
You can, and during the beta, most of us didn't really notice it because you only had so many skill points, and it was very hard to like refund just one specific skill because of the way the skill tree was structured. And it was structured in a certain way that you needed X amount of skill points to unlock the next tier down. But by the time you get into the game and you get really deep into the game, even like probably around like level 30 or 40 and you've done a couple zones, ideally you'll have enough points spread across your tree that just respecing one or two different things isn't going to require you to respec half your tree just so you can meet the minimums.
Now, they did state in previous developer interviews that it's going to be very hard to respec your character and that they would recommend just making a whole new character because of it.
They did say that, and I do think they backtracked on it. And for good reason, because they are trying to, it appears that the dev team is trying to make Diablo 4 appeal to more people, more gamers. And if you make a system that just requires people to make 2 or 3 or 4 of the exact same character, and it resets at the end of the season, so you don't even get to keep them moving from season to season, you're going to really alienate a lot of your more casual player base, who is the player base they're trying to expand on. Do you know what I mean?
But it looks like they're starting to go back on what they said based on player feedback through the beta and people's initial concerns playing the game overall. Either way, I think this is a massive step in the right direction because it feels like they are not trying to work with the best systems they have implemented inside of Diablo 4. One of my favorite things is that I can pick up a legendary item with a power.
Yeah, it said in the beta that T3 didn't unlock till... Oh, yeah. That was something I saw earlier. Sorry, just moved up a chat message thing, and it just threw me off.
Powerful aspect, and I can change my build to play toward that aspect because it's so powerful. I love that it allows me to change up my gameplay style to give me a fresh new experience based on the equipment that I have current access to. Some users on Twitter were having a discussion based on this, and they stated, gold for talent respect discourages experimentation and creates a gap between casual and hardcore players. It makes the game dependent on economy and goes against the spirit of Diablo. Players should have freedom to customize their characters without worrying about cost. Another user stated,
I mean, it does, and that's the point that we were just making, right? Like, your casual player base will have a hard time constantly respecting their characters, and your respec will change as you're gaining access to gear. No reason to have currency costs for respecing talents. It should be free in town. Creating armory and loadouts, it really does. I get it, and I get the thought process behind it, but I think that they'll eventually just have to do away with it because of how bad it's going to hurt your more casual players. And you know, if you really can't even spec out, right, until you're like running world tier 4, and you can't do that till level 70, what are you supposed to do when you get some awesome piece of gear in world tier 3 that carries you all the way to world tier 4, or maybe makes you switch up your playstyle 4 separate times? Why are you getting punished because you're running through gear and you haven't made it to an in-game build yet? So, I don't know. I like the system in World of Warcraft. I do like the system in World of Warcraft, and I do like the free respecs. So, as much as I want to say, like, I understand why there should be cost, I would be happy with it just going away. Do you know what I mean? But it is going to create problems for loadouts and all sorts of other stuff, Ern. I agree.
Stated, I want to add that endgame activities such as dungeons, world bosses, and PvP promotes having different builds, and if we want to switch activities, let's say daily.
And that's true, right? So you might need to run a certain build for dungeons solo, and you might need to run a different build for dungeons in a group, and you might want to run support for your friends with like a 0 damage build, and then you might want to go world boss, and it's all about single target DPS. And then you're going to run PvP where it's about crowd control and single target DPS. Do you know what I mean? No, I agree. You know, the more you look at it, the less it makes sense to have it have any cost. Because I can think of 5 or 6 different builds, and while they might not be crazy different, there will be some differences. And if every time I want to try a different activity, I have to respec, or I have to make 2 necros or 3 necros, and they're all 3 going to get deleted at the end of the season, and I'm swapping gear between them, that is just not fun as a game mechanic, and that will kill a lot of the sort of enjoyment that people have with the game. And they're not going to be able to experiment. Like, you're not going to be able to see some fun build on YouTube or on Max Roll or on Icy Veins or from your favorite Twitch streamer and go, I want to try this build because it looks fun, because now you can't afford to even respec your character. Yeah, make 3 characters that get different gear drops. Exactly.
Will we be able to switch that often? Is it really that non-prohibitive? Now, coming from someone who wants to do every bit of content, it's either going to cost me most of my gold, which will then prohibit me from upgrading my equipment, transferring legendaries on new pieces, and even having crafting restrictions, or I just simply won't be able to participate in some of the highest difficulty encounters because my spec isn't going to be the best for that scenario, and I just simply won't perform well.
I don't, and I get what Comeback's saying here. For him, for me, for a lot of content creators, it's not going to matter. I think that the conversation is more around people that don't have 20, 30, or 40 hours a week to put in the game. And that is the majority of your player base. The majority of your player base gets between 10 to 20 hours a week to game. And making systems that prevent them from seamlessly enjoying all aspects of the game hurts them. And that is definitely a problem.
Well, or I'll just get beat. I know this won't apply to most of the player base, but PvP is a perfect example of this. There are definitely abilities out there that perform incredibly well for PvP, but very poorly for PvE. When it comes to the majority, no one's going to want to constantly have to change their entire skill tree with the plethora of talents we're going to have by the time we hit level 50. It's going to become incredibly tedious and frustrating if there aren't at least skill/build loadouts implemented into the game. Yep. Now, to be honest, something that kind of scares me and something that Blizzard can definitely capitalize on is the fact that people don't want to spend all their gold on respecing. Tons of games do things like this, and instead of it being completely pay to win, it's right in that middle ground where it's pay for convenience as well as having some sort of pay to win implementations, with the fact that you don't have to use your actual gold on something most of the player base is spending their gold on, giving you a slight advantage. What they could do is very easily just bring in a respec token into the shop or implement it into the battle.
I don't like that. I get it, and I get a respec token, and we talked about it before. But respec tokens are a great way to milk your casual players who don't have the time to sort of play the game and grind the game, but they want to try out different things. So once, they might buy a 10-pack of respec tokens to try out different stuff, and then bam, they're out of fucking respecs, and they don't have enough gold to respec. I don't want to see respec tokens brought in. I think respec should be free, and we should be able to save loadouts and build-outs, and I would like to see a system closer to WoW.
Battle Pass, allowing you to respec all your skills for absolutely free, costing you 0 gold. It does seem that there are some systems inside of Diablo 4 that can have the potential for having the pay-for-convenience type option, and it be a bit of a gray area, which definitely worries some of the player base. Now, we do have to remember that Blizzard is a business at the end of the day, and they are going to try and focus on what brings in more money to a live service game, so they can keep updating it over and over for the player base. Examples that we're already seeing so far is the Battle Pass coming to every single season, the major 4-day early access if you spend...
Is that actually... are those... Is this the actual, necro transmogs? Because those look terrible. Those don't look good at all. Compared to the stuff that was already in the game, that doesn't look very good at all.
And additional money and a potential gray area opportunity for a lot of...
I'll have to see it in game and just see how it works, and see what the costs are, because if it's going to be $10 for 1,000 tokens, or you know what I mean, then you're getting 1.5 cosmetic sets for $10. We just need to see what the battle pass gives you.
Out of their systems out there. Now, obviously, this isn't confirmed. These are just concerns that we have overall with some things that they can implement into the game. And these things can definitely leave a bad taste in some of the player base's mouth. Now, if you want my honest opinion, I think Blizzard and the Diablo creators are very scared to upset the player base on the little respect that they have given to them left with the whole Diablo Immortal thing, but...
I don't think that... How do I want to say this? I don't think it's fair to speculate on monetization policies that haven't been announced when Diablo's already said they're going to stay away from pay-to-win aspects, right? I don't feel like that's fair to speculate against Blizzard. The other thing is, I don't know that Blizzard is really worried about burning their goodwill. so much as just trying to find the best way to implement things that drive the largest profit. And I think that has less to do with goodwill. I think there is a handful, like I think there's a percent of any game's player base that is like a responsible consumer that goes, I don't like this game, or I don't like its practices, so I'm not going to play. But I also think that's a very small portion, just like the very small portion is like the hardcore gamers. I think the vast majority of your sort of gamers aren't really going to care and aren't going to care about goodwill being burned and all that. They're just going to want a quality product that they feel like is good and that they can enjoy, and bonus items they can spend their money on that make sense, without feeling like they're being forced to pay for the ability to play the game. Not so much pay to win, but just the ability to pay to play, which is like where pay for convenience comes in. That can get to a point where it feels like you're paying to play, and that's kind of a problem. As long as they have grindable or farmable cosmetics, will be okay, since there's a box cost for the game. Exactly. And as long as a lot of that stuff comes in the season pass that you're already given, and either they give you cosmetics or they give you 2,000 tokens or whatever for completing the season pass, and that lets you buy 4 or 5 cosmetics, most of your player base isn't going to give a flying fuck. And a lot of your player base is going to open up their wallet and they're going to pull out their credit card and they're going to say, I can spend $20 a month on this video game that I enjoy and I spend my free time on. Even though I've bought it, I'll spend $20 a month, and they'll put their $20 or $30 or $40 on a month, and they'll buy the cosmetics and they'll buy the things. I know this because I was a gamer, still am a gamer. I've got friends that are gamers, not streamers. They have decent jobs, and the first thing they say is, I play a game as sort of my escape. This is my entertainment. I don't mind paying 10, 15, 20 bucks a week or a month because I derive enjoyment out of this. Because they can afford to. And I think that, people that are on the opposite side of that going, it shouldn't cost anything, it shouldn't be anything. I think that's actually a majority of the gamers. I think most gamers go, I play this game 10 hours a week. I would pay $20 to go to the movies to watch 2 hours worth of a movie between popcorn and everything else. I don't mind spending $20 for a cosmetic that I think's dope. You know what I mean? That's just the gamers. And I know a lot of content creators and people like to beat their fucking chest and scream about how it's unfair and people don't like it. But they really don't care. And as long as they're enjoying the game, they'll pay for it.
So I'm pretty sure they'll do the right thing in making Diablo 4 not a big cash grab like Diablo Immortal was. Now, moving on to some final super interesting topic.
Diablo, see, I get so tired of people comparing everything to Diablo Immortal. Diablo Immortal was first and foremost a cell phone game. Cell phone games have a completely different monetization policy. And right, wrong, or indifferent, it's a lot more accepted over there. Like, I don't think you could bring that business model to PC gaming and get away with it right now. In the current landscape, I don't think you could do it.
Is the lead game designer for Diablo 4 is Zaven Haratunian made some very interesting comments on Twitter replying to Mike Ybarra saying, let's buff the Butcher and make him truly feared. He replied by saying, just wait till he shows up in Nightmare Dungeons, He will get his pound of flesh. Now this is very interesting because the open beta and early access weekends, if you encountered the Butcher and you weren't geared to the teeth or simply very skilled at the game, it pretty much meant that you were likely going to die in that encounter. He's a very overtuned boss with very, very powerful abilities, and he has been famous through social media the last couple of weeks. Now, of course, there are some people out there who have defeated him with their builds, either solo or with a group, but he is still a very feared opponent overall.
And they've already said, they said that they want the Butcher and other encounters like that to feel scary and to feel unique and to never truly feel like you're safe in Diablo. So the fact that he's going to show up in Nightmare Dungeons on high tier keys and stuff, it's not a surprise to me, and I think it's going to be a fun way to keep things at least a little bit more enjoyable, so you don't get in that lull of I'm just going to go in auto mode, you know what I mean? I'm going to turn my brain off and I'm just going to farm. Somebody's going to show up that's going to challenge you. So I think that's a good thing.
The lead game designer say something as bold as him showing up in a Nightmare Dungeon, which is going to be the hardest content available to you at the end game, could make him a supercharged monster that could be very well feared no matter who you are and how skilled you are. I think it'd be amazing to see him overall in the end game, and I would love to keep on encountering him as I'm leveling up. And even encountering him in the end game content can be very terrifying and refreshing overall.
I do want to see him, but I want to see other bosses. Like, I don't only want to see the Butcher. I don't want it to be like, fuck, the Butcher's here again. Fuck, the Butcher's here again. Hopefully they have a handful, a half a dozen of these, like, sort of unique bosses that they can spawn in at random times and can really throw a wrench in different things. That's what I want to see, and that's what I'm hopeful for.
And lastly, we have an amazing leak come out about the full map of Diablo 4 and all their landmarks being shown. Now, I personally can't show you this on YouTube, but there are a ton of interesting things on here that you need to check out for yourself, including...
I posted on Twitter. I don't know why you can't show it on YouTube. I'm not entirely for sure. Maybe there's like some TOS thing about like leaks and spoilers. I really don't know why it can't be shown. But if you are curious, you can always check our Twitter. You can check Reddit. It shows the size of the map versus the size of Diablo 4's beta, and the size is pretty considerable. Maybe the map they're looking at has like POIs and stuff like that that is not available to the public, and that's why it can't be shown. But it is. There's definitely a big difference in the map, and it's a good thing.
Including all the waypoints, locations, and dungeons.
Now, the one I saw didn't have the waypoints, didn't have the dungeons, didn't have any of that marked on it. It was just the size comparison.
Interesting points that look like powerful bosses and locations and strongholds, as well as there being a dungeon that is completely yellow that looks like some sort of golden dungeon. So this could be a great way for you to prepare some routes you want to take if you're going to do dungeon farming or boss farming come launch day. We have so much content coming up for you.
But guys, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. There was definitely some good information in here. There was a little bit of news, but I think most of this news is stuff we have already covered before. It's always open for discussion, though. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think, what your guys' thoughts are, what you're looking forward to seeing, and what you're not looking forward to seeing with Diablo 4, and what you'd like to see changed before Diablo 4 comes out. As always, have a great day.